welcome to the BoshNRoll channel. If you want to support my daily Eternal Magic offerings while getting amazing perks like the BoshNRoll Discord community, have me play your deck on the channel, or listen sideboard guides before tournaments, check out the Patreon or YouTube membership program. This channel is possible because of these amazing sponsors. Check them out, all their links are in the video description. As always, thanks for being here. Let's go play some Magic.
Welcome back to the BoshNRoll channel. Today I'm playing Vintage at the request of Patreon subscriber Guy, and I've got something a little special for you. Today I'm partnering with Andreas Ecobaronen Peterson, MTG content creator and skilled grinder of all formats, and we're going to showcase the Vintage format. Right now, at the time of the recording, the top 5 decks in Vintage are Dimir, Lurrus, Dredge, Oath, Mono White Initiative, and Jewel Shops. Not in that order, but those are the 5 according to MTG Goldfish. And over the last year, I have carved out a space as something of an Oath expert. So I'm going to try Oath, and I'm going to play against all 4 of the other top 5 decks, piloted by Andreas. I have not been playing a ton of Vintage. I've been focusing on other stuff, but Eternal Weekend is coming up. The Asia Eternal Weekend already happened. The US is less than a month away, and Prague is 2 weeks after that. I will be attending both of those events and have to know how to play Vintage by then. Oath. The goal of this deck is to put Atrax into play if this is your first exposure to this archetype at all. The ways we do that are the namesake Oath of Druids. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if an opponent controls more creatures than them, they can flip cards off the top of their deck till they hit a creature, put that creature into play and the rest into the graveyard. It's slightly more nuanced than that, but that's basically what the card does, which means that my job is to resolve Oath and then make sure my opponent has creatures in play. We do that with Forbidden Orchard, taps for any color and gives your opponent a 1/1 when you do it. One of the classic kind of Vintage shorthands for a nut draw is Mox Orchard Oath. That means any color Mox Forbidden Orchard plus Oath gives them a creature and puts Oath into play on turn 1, so you can have an Atrax on turn 2. We've also got the new Into the Floodmaw from Bloom Burrow. Gift a tapped fish means that you can give your opponent a fish token to get an extra effect out of this card. Bounce target creature an opponent controls if the gift was promised. Instead, return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. This is kind of the perfect tool, much like Oko is, to turn a hate piece like a Grafdigger's Cage or a Containment Priest into something different. They don't have a cage anymore, and they do have a creature. They don't have a cage anymore, and they do have an elk. These are doing similar jobs here. I've never played with Into the Floodmaw until this video. I'm testing that out myself. Show and Tell also in this deck. If you draw an Atraxa, you can shove it into play. Tinker is in this deck to get Bolas' Citadel. And while Oath is pretty much the worst Bolas' Citadel deck that's ever been in the Vintage format, it doesn't really matter because Bolas' Citadel is busted if it's in play. And this just gives us additional density of things worth casting. Between Oath, Show and Tell, and Tinker, that's 9 game-ending bangers that we can cast. Flash can also put Atraxa into play temporarily, long enough to look at 10 cards and refill your hand, which in Vintage should be converted to a win pretty easily. If the game gets grindy, you could even pay the extra mana. That comes up a lot, especially in Oath mirrors, where people are afraid to cast Oath or afraid to tap Forbidden Orchard. You end up with a lot of resources around. Just flashing in an Oath, or flashing in an Atraxa, then paying the difference in your opponent's end step. Frequently win that game. Then as far as selections for the more invested Vintage players who are interested in the specific cards I'm playing, Gaia's Blessing has been coming up in a lot of lists lately. This is not a card I played in Eternal Weekend last year or at the NYSC this year. It's generally, I don't think you need it. Gaia's Blessing is target player shuffles 3 cards from their graveyard into their library and you draw a card, and if this is put into your graveyard from your library, shuffle your graveyard into your library. The bottom line of text is what we actually want here, and the reason is, when you activate Oath, you mill cards till you hit a creature. Those cards are in the graveyard, they're gone. And if your opponent can answer 2 or 3 Atraxas, you might not actually be able to kill them before you run out of cards in your deck. That's one of the concerns that Oath players have to deal with. But with Gaia's Blessing, you can Oath fearlessly, and you'll just Oath past the Gaia's Blessing, hit the Atraxa, shuffle your graveyard back in, and you basically have an unlimited number of Oath cannons you can fire until you accidentally draw the Gaia's Blessing, then it's stuck in your hand, and then you gotta stop. That does let you get grindy in super slow matchups where they're able to, like, against Jewel Shops, they have a bunch of Phyrexian Metamorphs. They could just copy your Atraxa, and then you have to trade Atraxas, and you both have a bunch of resources, and that's a deck that can just run you out of deck if you're not able to loop your Atraxas. The Esper Lurrus deck, that one Eternal Weekend Asia, has 4 Swords to Plowshares in the main. If they just plow a bunch of Atraxas, if they plow 3 of them, you might not be able to win anymore without Guy's Blessing looping that last one, or giving you the last one and putting your deck back in where you could keep playing. We'll see how this comes up. Might like it, might not. I love a Thoughtseize. This is kind of my signature inclusion in Oath. It's good against combo, which is your worst matchup. It helps versus control, which is generally a good matchup. And then you board it out versus like mono white initiative, which is a great matchup. Nothing else in the deck should really surprise anyone. We have all the busted free permission, all the busted free mana, Ancestral Recall, Time Walk. These cards are great. Like I said, I am not hyper in touch with Vintage right now. I am beginning my Eternal Weekend prep right now live on camera, and I get to play against one of the strongest players in the Vintage world and play against all 4 of the other top 5 decks. This is going to be a great set. Thanks to Guy for sponsoring it, and let's get in. Building a new deck is one of the best feelings in TCG gaming. Sleeving it up, laying it out, thinking about the new strategy and all the cool new cards you get to try, but you're still a few cards short of getting to play with it. You log into the usual TCG online marketplace only to realize shipping will cost more than the cards. Put an end to that with Card Trader Zero from cardtrader.com. Card Trader functions as your personal P.O. box, collecting orders from sellers all around the world and shipping you one affordable package. Shop their worldwide marketplace and save on shipping at cardtrader.com and use code BoshNRoll for 5% off your first order. I'm on the draw versus the first matchup, which is going to be Dimir Lurrus. Obviously, Lurrus is revealed, so we know what deck this is. I do know what decks I'm going to be playing in what order, out of fairness, because he knows I'm on Oath the whole set. We don't know each other's specific lists. This hand does not do anything. I might keep this versus like Jewel Shops, because I have Force, and then Flusterstorm's a pretty bad counter versus Jewel Shops, but at least having Force blue card and another counter is good. If one of these lands or Moxen were green, I would have a turn 1 Oko with Force Protection, which is good enough, but this hand just doesn't do enough as it is. Okay, a turn 1 Tinker. I don't like having 2 Atraxas in the hand. That's kind of just one wasted, but it does turn on Show and Tell and Flash if I draw them. The hallmarks of the Lurrus deck are that it just has a insane amount of permission in it, and then it recoups somehow. I'm leading on Oko, because this is worth countering, but Tinker's the one I actually want to resolve. If I can flush out a counter here, this is good. This also dodges stuff like Flusterstorm. They force pitching Gitaxian Probe. So he could have probed me and didn't. I think I'm going to read that as doesn't have another blue card, or doesn't have another blue card he wants to pitch to force. What a cast Ancestral Recall by now, I think. A handful of non-blue cards. What does that mean? And he would have just Spell Pierced if he had that. Could have used Force of Negation and saved Force of Will. And not that I'm playing a bunch of creatures in my deck anyway. Here's Black Lotus, Psychic Frog, and Time Walk. All right, so went down to 1 card in hand, but Psychic Frog is active, and that card is really good. That would qualify as a blue card he didn't want to pitch, and so would Time Walk. So the story is coming together here. I would love if he just played a land and bought Lurrus here. Just tap out, let me do what I want. Vexing Bauble. That sucks every ass. You only get 1 of these days, and that makes Bolas' Citadel not work. Okay, good. Well, that looked a little desperate. Playing Moxjet. What does this play around? Anything? I'm going to tinker away my Sapphire and hope he doesn't have another counterspell. All right, we got Bolas' Citadel in. Here's Oath. I still have my land drop available. Okay, had enough. And this is why I think Tinker is really important in Oath decks. Some Oath decks don't play the Tinker package, but you just shove this thing. This is how you beat combo decks. Outmuscle control decks just by playing a must counter every turn of the game. Cool. Yeah, he was on the play with Force, Blue Card, Psychic Frog, Time Walk, and we still won on our second turn. I do generally think that this matchup is positive for Oath because they have to put creatures into play to win. And that checks one of the boxes of like, you need an Orchard or you need an Oko to give them a creature. Not every deck does that. But the Urza Saga restriction put Dimir Lurrus in a spot where they're built around Psychic Frog and Orcish Bowmaster now, and that's how they win primarily. One really interesting new card since the last time I was hyper invested in Vintage, the last time I really had to play, is Consigned in Memory, which every blue deck plays now, and that can counter an Oath trigger and function as kind of a mini Time Walk. If I build a whole plan around resolving Oath, then it triggers and they counter the trigger. That's kind of like a Time Walk. Or they could let Atraxa come into play, counter the Atraxa trigger, and then just kill it with something like Soul Rend or Source of Plowshares if they're a white build, which I don't think he is. I don't really like Force of Negation here. They're a deck full of creatures, and I'm mostly taking action on my own turn. If I can kill stuff, keep the pressure off, that's probably where I want to be. I don't know how much I like Dismember. I might like Nature's Claim more than that. I might just bring in the 2 Decays and chill. Yeah, I think I'm just going to bring in 2 Decays and see what his sideboard plan looks like for game 2. Like I said, I think this matchup is generally structurally positive. Like, it's up to Dimir Lurrus to figure out how they're going to stop me and win, where my default is better than their default. So if I can mostly keep my deck intact while respecting possible sideboard cards like Grafdigger's Cage, then I like that position. Okay, I can cast and protect an Ancestral Recall on turn 1. Is that enough to keep the hand on the strength of? I have Show Atraxa for how I'm actually going to win after that. Okay, so Floodmaw's my blue card, and Ancestral. This is a deck with 5 Wastelands. Part of the Lurrus Saga game plan is they play 4 Wasteland plus Strip Mine. And that's a pretty effective way to punish exactly this hand. I'm not going to mull it. I have a plan. I have a Protected Ancestral Recall. Let's roll the dice on this one. Really, Wasteland is the thing that would bum me out. Bonus on 6. Underground Sea, Black Lotus. I rarely force a Black Lotus. There's spots where, like, your Spidey sense tingles and you're like, wait, this is something I need to do. I will force this because I kind of like my hand. If my force gets countered, I get to draw new cards anyway. And if my force doesn't get countered, okay, that's fine. All right. My hand is actually better. Maybe, kind of. I have turn 1 Oath. I can't make a creature yet. Or make them have a creature yet, and I just pitched Floodmaw, which is one of the ways to do that. He's got 2 baubles going here. Show and Tell. Oh, that's a good one. Land Mox. I'm going to play around Strip Mine, or play around Wasteland by getting the island. You force, I force. Force pitch to dig through time. And now this is where the game gets interesting, because he is a deck that wins with creatures. The Time Twister is already in the graveyard. Time Twister Bowmaster is kind of the closest thing to a combo in this stock build. And, all right, well, had the Strip Mine. You play around a 4-of, you get got by the 1-of, but fetching a non-basic would have been worse. And now I'm in kind of trouble. All right. But the power of Oath of Druids is that this game is going to get super weird just with this permanent being in play. Like, he can't really just cast a Psychic Frog and try to get ahead here. Has to do something else. And my next land is a good one because it represents Flash. Easy game. Always had it. I'm going to pass and try to act in his end step. Undercity Sewers. Been to Moxjet. Not interested in mana here. Okay, bought Lurrus. Started to pass the turn, then ended up buying Lurrus. I'm going to get Underground Sea because that fills out all my colors. And Flash. The cool thing about Flash is this could just be bait, or I could look at 10 cards. Okay, we've got Bolas's Citadel. I could show and tell that in. That's an artifact. Force is an instant. All right, he's just GG and done. Yeah, he can see that I have Citadel with backup here, or Forbidden Orchard to turn on Oath. Just, I have everything here. And there it is, just outmuscling the best deck in the format 2 pretty easy games in a row. Good start to the league. Let's go.
This video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, the easiest way to build Magic decks online. Moxfield supports over 30 formats, including Legacy and everything else you'll see on this channel. There's multiple customizations so you can interact with your deck how you want. Views such as text, grid, or stacks, and groupings like type, subtype, color, color identity, even artist. The site offers light mode, dark mode, and so much more. However you want to see your deck, Moxfield can provide it for you. Follow my Moxfield to keep up with the channel and what I'm playing in paper. I'll see you there.
Okay, I'm on the play for game 2, which is Dredge, and I do know that, which is awkward because I have the 1 of Strip Mine in my opening hand, and Dredge is a deck that needs Bazaar of Baghdad to function. But even in the interest of fairness, I would definitely keep this turn 2 Oath Orchard with Force backup, and in case that fails, I could show a Teletraxon curve. Like, this hand is just good. And now we get the stress game of how many cards do they keep? Because they literally can't keep a hand without Bazaar of Baghdad in it, and when Dredge keeps 7, basically all decks are dead. This deck is so good and so resilient if it can Force of Will and Force of Vigor and do all this other stuff. But if they go down to like 4 cards, we could have good news. Okay, he just went to 5, powdered twice, and then went to 4. So this might be one of those easy games. And it's a little awkward to showcase one match versus Dredge because it might just be one match where they go to like 2 or 3 twice and we don't really get a match. But I mean, that's the Dredge experience. What do you want us to do? Just like refire the game until they keep 7 and I lose? This is an honest reflection. He is doing the best he can with the deck that he has. I like that 2 Creeping Chills are in exile already. That's like a bunch of reach that I don't have to think about. And 1 Archimage, but 1 Hollow One are out. Okay, I can just play Strip Mine and pass, or I can play Forbidden Orchard and pass and see what the next turn looks like. I mean, I'm just going to Strip Mine him basically no matter what, right? Why wouldn't I do that? Like, the Hollowvine decks play Wastelands next to their Bazaar, and if I just run the Strip Mine out, they could Wasteland it, then play Bazaar in the following turn, but Dredge doesn't do that. I'm going to play Forbidden Orchard and pass. This gives me the best outs. If I draw a Mox next turn, I can just Strip Mine him anyway and play Oath, but Underground Sea doesn't do that. And if I just run the Strip Mine out, he might make different decisions based on like keeping a Noxious Revival around or something like that, which I don't want to reward. Can I draw the Mox? Do another Atraxa. Don't like that. All right, I'll put you on the slow Dredge. And this is where it gets dicey, because if he did mull to 4 and happen to have 2 Bazaars, it's garbage mode. A Grief Icarid hit the graveyard, and there is a Shambling Shell. Okay. Now I drew a blue card. I'm happy to pitch. Well, I had Atraxa already. And this is one of the games where you draw 2 Atraxas and you're pretty happy to have the Gaia's Blessing. In this game, I would even just cast Gaia's Blessing and shuffle away the Shambling Shell, and then he has no Dredger and no Bazaar. Okay, Dredge to 3, hit Creeping Chill. I get attacked for 4. And this is why it's important that 2 Creeping Chills ended up in exile, because Dredge is built kind of like a burn deck these days, more than it is like a Bridge from Below strategy. Okay, I milled most of my deck. There is not a Gaia's Blessing trigger on the stack, and it's not in these 10 cards either. That means it's in the bottom 5 cards of my deck, which is actually pretty funny, because that means it's hidden from his knowledge. Okay, had enough, though. Not beating a 7-7 when you clearly have nothing going on. Stealing game 1 versus Dredge is worth a lot. Generally, they try to win game 1 and then just split the sideboard games with you and get over the hump. I don't have a lot of hate for Dredge. I built my list the way I would in an open field, which is, I think Oath generally has a fine plan versus Dredge anyway. So I'm not going to go too crazy against them. I'm not going to bring in Consigned to Memories, countering like a Creeping Chill trigger or an Archimuba trigger. I don't think that's where the game hinges. Sarah's Emissary naming creature mostly makes their deck ineffective. Tabernacle is just a bunch of Plague Winds, because their deck doesn't have any mana in it. They have some Wastelands in the sideboard to counter that. I don't really care what's in their hand for Gitaxian Probe. They're not casting spells on their turn, so I don't like Force of Negation. I do like some number of forces. and counter spells like keeping the Flusterstorm in. Thoughtseize is a weird object in this matchup. Top's probably too slow. I could bring in the Sphinx to tinker for, in case I need to tinker for a body at low life. That does gum up my Oath. Like, I don't really want to Oath into Sphinx if I'm trying to dig for something, but I still have more Atraxas than anything else. Can't imagine Flood Maw matters very much. It is a blue card. Mental Misstep counters Noxious Revival, which is how they get their Bazaars back. Bolas' Citadel is interesting, because if I do it on turn 1 or 2, it might be fine, but on like turn 3, I might not have enough life to use it. Yeah, I think I'm going to do this. Let's run it. There was one Oath deck that top 8'd Eternal Week in Asia, and they did have 4 Leyline of the Void in their sideboard. A lot of respect for Dredge. Just more respect than I really want to give it, honestly. Okay, this is 1 mana away from Tinker, 1 mana away from Show and Tell, and I have Tabernacle in the meantime. I'll try it. A sideboard card and 2/3 of a plan. He stopped on 6 this time. That's a lot more cards than he had last game. No powders, so all the pieces are still in the deck. With 4 Creeping Chill, I basically have to treat my life total like it's 8 in terms of where I'm comfortable and where I'm not. Like if I do successfully tinker for that Citadel, I can't just like go to 2 and pass the turn and assume that's fine. Grief pitching Grief. This will probably take Mox Pearl, is my guess, because that takes me the farthest away from all the other shit. Grief being included in these decks is a big reason to play Leyline over something like Ravenous Trap or Surgical Extraction or anything like that. Just having the thing down and safe from being discarded matters a lot. I just don't want to dedicate 4 sideboard slots that also encourage me to mulligan strangely against a deck that I don't respect that much when I'm Oath. Like, Dredge is obviously a great deck, and if you don't respect it, you're going to lose to it, but in terms of just matchup structure and how the pieces move and everything, I just don't think you need to dedicate like 6 slots to Dredge. Taking Show and Tell is really interesting. Okay, I drew a land. I'm going to play out the things that he knows about. I really wish one of these was a green source so I could Beseiju this Bazaar. Okay, the slow Dredge first. Could have Bazaar'd in the upkeep, but chose not to. With this many Dredgers, you don't really need to do that, though. And he does have the one of Golgari Grave Troll. That card is restricted. So Grave Troll 2 mystery cards in hand right now. Mana Crypt's interesting. How do I leverage that? Okay, I can sandbag this Beseiju. Mana Crypt, Tinker. If he's got a Force of Will or Vigor, they both cover this. Okay, that does put you to just Golgari Grave Troll in hand. And I'll play out the Tabernacle here, hide the fact that I have Beseiju. I would much rather find a green source and kill the Bazaar than I would cast Oko here. And here's a Narcomoeba trigger that the Tabernacle just covers. That's why playing it out matters. Opponent is Hellbent. There is 1 Icarid moving around over there. Big Dredges in the upkeep. Hit another Narco. This is going to trigger Prized Amalgam. Bunch of those happening. That's what Tabernacle's for. This is just 9 power that's not going to be in play. Actually 11 power because a Narcomoeba and a declined the first Narcomoeba, then this one's going to die. So that's 11 power that's not in play just because I have Tabernacle. Hand right now is Golgari Grave Troll. Mox Jet. That's kind of a bummer. I do have to block this Icarid. Okay. Play Beseiju. Play Mox Jet. Oko. I'm going to Elk my Mox Pearl. This can just block the Icarid if it needs to. I have to pay for it with Tabernacle, but that's fine. Yeah, you got a bunch of shit to do. I just have to keep my life total above 12 before the creeping chills kick in. He's also 39 cards into his deck and hasn't hit any chills yet. That either means I'm going to take 12 very quickly at the bottom half or bottom third of the deck, or he boarded them out. Okay, tapping Bazaar in the upkeep. Still dredging, still going wild here. Icarid. I wonder if there is a like Thassa's Oracle pivot. That would be really weird, but not impossible. Yeah, still dredging. 7 cards left in that deck. Are 4 of them creeping chill? Okay, he is attacking Oko. I'm going to keep Oko alive because making a food every turn is also life total. There are a lot of Icarids in the graveyard at this point. Oko's already been worth 6 life. and then it'll be 9. And if he attacks Oko with 2 of these, it's already 15. I am running out of stuff to do here. If I don't find a show and tell to get this emissary in, could just get Icarid blitzed. And this is why he took show and tell, because he boarded out his creeping chills and knew he would have to win with Icarids. There are plenty of black creatures to exile still. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's 2 full turns of Icarid shit. I'm going to eat this food before I take damage. But this is exactly the number 8. If the creeping chills are still in there, I'm exactly dead right now. If they're somehow in the bottom 6 cards, all 4 of them. All right, Evoking Grief strips the Sarah's Emissary. Now show and tell's not even a draw. What am I looking for here? I might just be dead. Into the Flood Maw. That does actually keep me alive, weirdly. Sees another draw step. Probably not enough to win the game. I don't think he's going to Dredge here, and Mental Misstep's already milled, so I can wait. Yeah, I just took a draw. I don't need to give him a gift, so I won't. Okay, Oko. I'm at 2. Even if I draw the Ravenous Trap, I'm not close to casting it, and he's not going to put 3 cards in his graveyard anytime soon. Noxious Revival, targeting my Mana Crypt. Okay. So he's making me redraw my Mana Crypt. That's a effective little time walk trick. And I can't do anything with that. There are still 4 Icarids and more than 4 black creatures to exile. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One of the Icarids is in hand. That actually isn't helpful, but he has enough. Okay, yep. Just Icarid coast to coast. I have in everything that would have solved that problem. And Sensei's Dividing Top would have been good in that scenario. It countered my Tinker. Yeah, the Grief was enough there. Okay. What do I want to do differently? I'm on the play where Thoughtseize is kind of interesting. Consign countering an Icarid trigger doesn't really change the game at all. I'm not going to bring in Dismember for that. A Sensei's Top is a combo with Bolas's Citadel. It also helps in grindy weird situations like that one. Is there a card in my deck that's worse than Top? I don't necessarily need basic Island in my deck. You might have boarded in a couple of Wastelands, but that's not really what they're for, mana screwing me. Okay, I will. And Consign does counter Grief's trigger. I'm not going to do that, though. All right, let's go. I'm not going to bring in weird, specific things that are only useful in one exact situation. This is 3 ways to produce an Atraxa. I'm going to try it. It's slow and no disruption, but I'm going to go for it. He kept 7. That means I'm probably dead. Dredge keeping 7. Not necessarily beatable by anyone ever. Here's the Bazaar. Doing it main phase, digs for Grief. Yeah, I think I would have won that last game if I had the green source for Boseiju to kill the Bazaar before all 4 Icarids had shown up. That would have bought a lot of time. Discarded Force of Vigor, Noxious Revival, and Stinkweed Imp. I am going to fetch Underground Sea just because I don't want to draw a land here. Drawing a Force would be great. Drew a land anyway. Discarding Force of Vigor is kind of suspicious. Makes me think he's got another answer to Oath, but if he spends an answer on Oath, those are cards out of the hand that don't answer Show and Tell. Yeah, Force of Negation, pitching Force of Will. If I was going to go with Flash, I would have done it on his turn to play around Force of Negation, but that pitched a Force of Will, so he had it covered either way. This is what Dredge, when they have 7 cards, looks like, by the way. You just get to do it all. Upkeep Dredge means that the draw step is another hit. The Creeping Chills are back. They were out for game 2. They're back for game 3 now that he's more familiar with what my plan is. Narcomoeba Chill, taking at least 7 this turn. Another Narcomoeba. I know Stinkweed Imp is in the hand, and then 2 mystery cards. Hope it's not another Force Blue card. Ox Jet. That actually does matter because it lets me hit Tabernacle off of the Atraxa trigger. Wow, Dredge on 7, folks. Get your tickets here. This is what this looks like. Yeah, now we're probably dead. Like, if he was just on 6 cards instead of 7, would have had Force of Will and Golgari Thug in hand, or whatever it is, Stinkweed Imp, and not this extra blue card. Just every single card matters. There's a Creeping Chill. That's 3, 7, 8, 9. I'm at 2 on board. and he still has another Dredge this turn. Hit an Archamoeba. But this is the fear with Creeping Chill. It's just the other two are in there somewhere. Okay, so Atraxa has to hit Tabernacle and Ravenous Trap for me to have a chance in this game. And then do something else after that. Okay. Flash. Atraxa. I can't pay the difference. You're dead. Big hits. Let's go. There's Time Walk and Oath. That's something of a plan. Okay, hold on. You're saying there's a chance. So we've got... Oh, I didn't hit any mana. All right, so I can't Time Walk and Oath here this turn. Oath is an enchantment. Forbidden Orchard's a land. So is Boseiju. How do I thread this? This is actually really close to being good. Ravenous Trap has to be my instant. I can Demonic Tutor for Tabernacle. Is there a Ichorid in the graveyard? There's not. I wonder if the Ichorids and Chills come in and out as a package. I have no idea how to play Dredge. No idea. Is Boseiju more useful than... Yes. Okay, so I want Boseiju. I don't think I get Tinker and Time Walk here. Well, I literally don't, because that's how the cards work. I will take Atraxa as a creature. So that's creature, land, sorcery, enchantment, instant, and then I have to choose between Tinker and Time Walk. The Tinker can get Sphinx. I did bring in the Sphinx, right? I'm pretty sure I did, for exactly this situation. Yes, Sphinx is in. I am going to take Tinker. Oh, wait, I need Demonic Tutor. Shit, I don't get any of this. If I take Demonic... That's a sorcery, right? Okay. So I have to take Demonic Tutor for Tabernacle just to be alive. Okay. That stings a little. How important is the slow Dredge here? Presumably there are 2 Creeping Chills in the deck. Okay, I mean, I have to get Tabernacle just to not die, so that's required. Tabernacle, play that. So the Tabernacle trigger will automatically turn on Ravenous Trap, because 6 cards are going to the graveyard here. And Creeping Chill, exiling it is a condition of dealing the 3. The Ravenous Trap does counter 1 Creeping Chill. If he goes to his draw step and mills over 1 chill, and then I trap, and in response he bazaars into the other chill, I lose this game. I just have to hope that the draw step Dredge misses on one of the 2 remaining chills. 27 cards, gets to flip 5 of them here. Maybe it's only 4. All right, please miss, please miss, please miss. Okay, missed. Hit 2 Ichorids, though. That's scary. Okay, now I have to somehow get 3 cards into his graveyard. Yikes. Oh, wait, I just have 5 mana, but I have to use Boseiju, so not really. Or it's 4 mana. Why did I think this was a 5-drop? That's slightly better, but still doesn't solve my problem. If I Boseiju Bazaar, I just die. Maybe I just had to trap there and hope it worked. Yeah, I'm 1 mana short, just 1 Mox. 1 additional Mox. Tabernacle doesn't tap for mana. I don't have a legend in play to reduce the Boseiju. Tabernacle, why don't you count? A worse player would have lost already, but Andreas knows exactly what the pressure points are here. If I could Boseiju the land and then hardcast the trap, I would actually have him in the hard lock, but he knows all of these pieces right now. I'm going to go to his upkeep. Yeah, just 1 piece short here. Okay. Have to trap and just die if 2 chills are in the mix. Or 1 chill. Any chills. Gets somewhere between 8 and 13 looks at 1 of the 2 remaining chills, if there are 2 chills still in the deck. I guess if I was going to end up locked in this spot anyway, I should have just Ravenous Trapped when it was free in his last end step. Okay, Bazaring in response, just needs to hit 1 chill. Missed. And, fingers crossed, missed! Oh my god. Did we miracle dodge? Oh my god. The Dredge experience, everyone! Okay. No cards in the graveyard. He knows I have Boseiju. Oh my god. You're saying there's a chance. Boseiju this Bazaar. Do I even play Oath? That's an interesting question. Because any creature he has in play either kills me or dies immediately. And if I do something like find an Oko and start picking into death with an Elk or show and tell this Atraxa in, I don't want him to get to mill all his Creeping Chills. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'm going to pass. How many Bazaars are gone? We've got 1, 2. They're so small. I think there's still a Bazaar left. 1, 2, and there's 1 here. So there is a Bazaar still in the deck. Yep, there it is. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Needed to fade that one. Needed to draw better than my opponent for a minute. Challenge level impossible. Okay. It's Bazaaring right now. Chills in his hand don't help him. The Ichrid in the graveyard wins immediately. Okay, so now I actually do have to win the game right now. Show and tell? Forbidden Orchard, you're too late. I needed to draw this before he drew this, and it did not happen. Oh, wait, can I cast Atraxa? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can. We're in. We're back in. I believe there is still 1 Underground Sea in the deck. Black, blue, green, white. Okay, so this will be impacted by how many chills actually are still in the deck. Mox Pearl. Didn't hit 2 Mox in to cast this Time Walk with. I can't cast Force. And Oko is free. I'll take the Pearl, I guess. The land happens. Time Walk and Flusterstorm. Play the Pearl. Oh, if this Time Walk worked, we'd be in business, but we're not. Okay. I'm going to discard an Oath and hope that there's not 1 chill left in the deck. I hope the 2 cards in hand are both Creeping Chill. Or they're the bottom 4 cards of the deck. I guess he could mill his whole deck here, so that doesn't matter. Pitch Shambling Shell. So if there is a Creeping Chill in the deck, we lose here. There's no way around that. Because you can mill exactly 9, and if there's even 1 in here, and there are 2. Yep, all right. Drawing that stupid fucking Bazaar before I drew any useful card. After grinding through a Dredge 7 keep with double force, triple force start. That was so close. But you can see why I don't respect Dredge as an Oath player in terms of stacking like 6 or 7 sideboard cards for it. That was close. He ran insane, drew better than me in a spot where his deck with no selection outside of Bazaar didn't have a Bazaar versus my deck full of win cons and card selection. It was just like, I'm not complaining. I'm not raging. It might sound like I am. But if we actually look at, like, he had 12 cards left in his deck. One of them's Bazaar. Like, if he just draws the 2 Creeping Chills before the Bazaar, he can't win that game. If I draw that Show and Tell, the 7th mana to cast Atraxa, the Forbidden Orchard, I had so many draws there that make his game irrelevant. So we can see how that would work out in my favor most of the time. And that was all on a 7 keep on the play. Or no, he was on the draw? I think I was on the play that game. But yeah, that's just... With the Creeping Chills and Ichrids, maybe Tabernacle's not the solution to Dredge right now. Maybe just more traps. Maybe I just bite the bullet and play Leyline of the Void. He's already challenging me for the next round. All right. Enough discussion about that. I think you get it. It was really close despite him just having the nuts at all points. On to whatever's next. The BoshNRoll channel is proudly partnered with the Resleevables.
Good. All right, here we go, gang.
In this YouTube series, hosts Cedric Phillips and Patrick Sullivan take us on a set-by-set journey through the good, the bad, and the ugly of Magic's history. Each episode is a focused deep dive into the facts about a set's design and release, the Magic lore expressed through the cards in that set, Tournament Edition gameplay videos featuring products and Pro Tour decks of the era, an award show that shouts out the best and weirdest cards of the set, and a final grade for the set's overall success. Whether you want a history lesson or a nostalgia hit, The Resleevables has it at youtube.com/theresleevables. I'm on the draw for match number 3. This is Jewel Shops. This is the one I'm most scared of. And this hand I would not keep in the blind, and I'm certainly not keeping versus Jewel Shops. Yikes. This one is interesting because 1 mana source cast Demonic Tutor, and then I'm in business. I am actually going to keep this. Passing a force check is the first thing you have to do versus this deck, and then follow up somehow is the other thing you got to do. I kept 7. Metamorph. All right, so we're just copying Mox Pearl. That's really interesting. Manifold Key, 3 cards left. Any mana source. Magic's easy. Get the fuck out of my way. A lot of people would probably say, like, oh, you got lucky, that was dumb. Whatever. I mean, scoreboard. Playing to your outs when you know you're behind is a skill of Magic players. And mana sources are the most plentiful card type in my deck. Now I have to figure out what I want to do with that, though. Because if I just grab another Force, I will probably survive this turn. Oh, I could get Black Lotus and just cast Show and Tell right now. That's the play. A little awkward with Show and Tell, because if he shows Jewel, I might just die. But I'm not going to win without an Atraxa in play. All right, yep. You've got Jewel. Your thing happens first, because that's how turns happen. I get to look at a pile of cards here. And I still have Force blue card in the back end. That's where I keep my blue cards, in the back end. All right, looks like he's trying a paradoxical outcome here. I am going to force this. If he forces me back, we're in trouble. All right, force pitching another PO. All right, so this picks up all these cards, including the Phyrexian Metamorph. Then Atraxa happens. Okay, there's one land here. There's Mox Pearl or Sensei's Top. I don't think Sensei's Top is going to improve my life. Mox Pearl, force blue card, but unfortunately this is the situation where Phyrexian Metamorph is just really good against Atraxa. Okay, I'm going to put this Mox Pearl into play. I can Tinker next turn without using my land drop, and that's going to have to be how I try to win. I wonder if Show and Tell when he was clearly on a Jewel line was my mistake there. Like, if I just get... What would I get instead? Just another Force, and then just try to play the game from no resources? That means I can never cast Show and Tell, which is probably fine. Yeah, if I lose this game, there was definitely a different decision tree that could have won it, or at least made it last longer. He knows my whole hand right now. Grim Monolith, okay. Manifold Key. If he's going for Jewel here, knowing that I have Force of Negation plus blue card, then he must have counter backup, because he could just Metamorph, which he knows is going to work, and get an Atraxa. But obviously, if he knows Jewel is going to resolve, that's better, because then he could use the Jewel to cast the Metamorph, and then just be up 3 cards and more stuff in play. Oh, you know this is here. Okay, that worked. That's really interesting. It's still Metamorph, but he could have Metamorphed first and possibly protected the Jewel. That's really interesting sequencing. Okay. This is not a great Atraxa deck, because there's basically only artifacts and lands in the deck. There's Sink into Stupor and PO, and then a bunch of artifacts, Ancient Tomb. And still 4 cards in the hand on top of all that. Let's hope there's not any additional starting mana sources to jump more, because if I could Tinker here, we still have a chance. Okay, took Crypt, PO, and Tomb, but I am getting a turn. What a gift. Time Walk is among the best cards that I could ever have. I'm going to Tinker away my Mox Pearl, get Citadel. Oh wow, just had Force. Okay, so he didn't care is the answer to my query about why did this happen. Like, why did he sequence that way? He just didn't care. Had Force, or maybe didn't have a blue card. Atraxa found the blue card to go with Force. That's what happened. Didn't want to pitch the Metamorph there. Okay. So PO, and the Jewel is in exile, though. And the PO is good for a lot. Yeah, finding the blue card off Atraxa was what happened there. He probably started with Coveted Jewel, thinking of Metamorph as the blue card for Force, but then either realized or decided that you'll see more cards off Atraxa, and you don't introduce the risk of me attacking you and stealing your Jewel. Does need another big card here, though, because pitched the PO, which is the payoff we knew about, but he certainly is floating a lot of mana. Did you just have 3 POs this game? Oh no, it's 4. Never mind. 4 POs this game. Good job. Oh, whatever. Yeah, the PO was so good this game too because of the Atraxa start where he just gets time vault here and I die. Yeah. The Atraxa start where if I look at 10 cards and maybe get to time walk or get a handful of counter spells before he does his next thing, then the jewel is out there where maybe I could steal it. But obviously just POing in response to the Atraxa trigger, also with force backup, it was just too much. Okay. I also could have just not cast the stupid show and tell, just demonic tutor for literally anything else and played the game slower. Maybe I'm crazy. Okay. Consigned to Memory, new card I have not played with in Vintage yet. Been playing it in every other format it's legal. Obviously the card's nuts. Null Rod specifically for this matchup. Nature's Claim, not great, but it can pick off a cloned Atraxa. Abrupt Decay is not actually good. I can take out something like Grafdigger's Cage or like Trinisphere, but most of the deck is 4-drops and beyond. It's not what I'm doing here. Mental Misstep doesn't matter against this deck. They have some ones, but it's like Soul Ring and Ancestral Recall, but mostly not. Sensei's Top, I think, is too slow, and I'm bringing in Null Rod. I like cutting my Mana Crypt when I'm bringing in my own Null Rods. I want everything that's a counterspell. Blood Maw is interesting. Like, they do have a creature pivot for Argentum Masticore and Wormcoil Engine and Hull Breacher, but I don't think they actually want to do that against the Oath deck. Flusterstorm, basically in their deck, only counters Paradoxical Outcome and Force of Will, and Tinker, where everything else they do ignores this. It does remain to be a blue card. This is exactly the matchup I called out where Gaia's Blessing might be useful. I could shave on Show and Tells because we saw the risk of casting that card. I could shave Probe because I don't really care what's in their hand, but it is nice to know. I think I'm going to cut into the Floodmaw and leave Flusterstorm, which is not what I would have done 6 months ago, but I'm trying new stuff. They didn't have Sink into Stupor last time I had to play Vintage. Yeah, this hand fails the force check, even though I like what's going on turn 2, but the Guy's Blessing and the opening hand were basically already on 6. Awkward. The Show and Tells are the cards that I like the least here. Maybe in the whole matchup. I'm going to keep it bottom one of the shows. I'll probably just like vamp for Tinker and try to win that way next turn. Could vamp for Null Rod and just sit on it. Play on one land with no plan. That doesn't sound good. Shop. Monolith is fine. Vault's fine. This list doesn't have a Bayou in it, which would finish out my colors. What do I want to do here? I'm 1 mana short of just vamping straight up for Bolas' Citadel. I could just vamp for Ancestral. Refill my hand. Oh, Consigned to Memory counters triggered abilities, which includes Jewel. But I don't really want to just vamp for Atraxa here unprotected, because Consigned doesn't protect me from my opponent's Force of Wills. Could vamp for Thoughtseize, that's interesting. It's kind of conservative. I think it's either Ancestral or Thoughtseize for me. Like, Tinker's too big of a cost, because I have to sack Lotus to pay for Tinker, then sack Sapphire to the Tinker, and then I'm playing on one land and I lose to a Force. Yeah, this is Ancestral for the reload or Thoughtseize for the peak. Getting Null Rod is basically the same as getting Tinker in terms of obliterating my resources. But maybe that's fine. Why is that fine? All right, I'm going to go for Ancestral Recall. I just want to see a bunch of cards here. I might even see Thoughtseize and Null Rod. Could be anything. Okay, I do have a land and a Pearl. This lets me consign up to 6 times if I need to. And I can play through Trinisphere. Replicate just beats Trinisphere straight up, by the way. Time Vault. I don't really want that card in play, but yeah, if you just Tinker here, I lose, and it beats Consign. Time Walk, okay. Now if I ever cast this Show and Tell, they might just put in Key and it's over. Just went to the Time Walk turn without doing anything else. I am dead to Tinker. I have no recourse to that. I now have to counter any Key that gets played. The one of Urza's Saga is a 3-turn ticking time bomb. There is 9 mana in the pool. Is this a outcome? Ancient Tomb. 3 cards left. It is an outcome. I can't interact with that. Yeah, we're probably dead. I think he has deduced that I don't have a counterspell that could counter a spell. But now the Time Vault's back in the hand where I can clip it on the way back down if I just want to remove that from my concerns. Monolith Vault. It's Time Vault. All right, I'll fight over Time Vault. Replicate it twice. This means he's going to need 3 counter spells to keep the Time Vault. Obviously, the way this turn is played out, probably just should have done it the first time, because that would have been 1 less mana with Academy, 1 less card with PO. And now, like, the jewel shit can just happen. I am interested in this deck's actual plan to win the game, though, with that in the graveyard. They have Karn the Great Creator that can still do stuff. With fewer Urza Sagas, it's a lot harder for them to apply pressure. Metamorphing, probably going to copy Vault or Monolith, and then PO again. He's been very good at drawing outcomes, which was the card that beats Consign to Memory. If that was Jewel or Ring, this game goes differently. Obviously, it wasn't those things, and the way he's just spamming these out clearly indicates another outcome. 10 cards in hand. And the Academy makes it so even if I had gotten Null Rod, he still would have been able to PO multiple times this turn. Tinker, Jewel, off we go. 9 cards in hand. We know 3 of them, or at least 2 of them, are Phyrexian Metamorphs. I'm just going to F6 because I want to see how he actually wins this game with Time Vault in the graveyard. And the answer is Karn Lattice. But I guess let's make him have it. Do get to draw the whole deck here, or most of the deck. Many cards. 33 cards is a lot to get through, and it basically has to be Karn. The Time Walk's already been used. Bunch of Metamorphs. This is 5 jewels so far this turn. 6 jewels. 7 jewels. Okay, there's Karn with 21 cards still in the deck. You got it. Yeah, if Karn was like the second to bottom card, we might have some weird outside chance there, but yeah, that matchup is just the worst. And we can see even in game 2 where I had a strong but conditional counterspell, access to any card in my deck, it was still like, I'm afraid to go for it because of what happened in game 1 when I tried to show and tell. I'm afraid to Null Rod just because I also play a bunch of artifact mana. Maybe if I Null Rod there, the game goes longer, but if he has the Academy, it doesn't matter. Just horrible, horrible matchup. Everything has to go my way in that one. On to the final round, where I get to be on the play versus White Initiative. We're a few rounds into the video. Thanks for sticking with me. If you're having fun, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to play what I'm playing, you can order it all in one package from cardtrader.com. Use code BoshNRoll for 5% off your first order. I am on the play for the final round against White Initiative. This is basically the best matchup imaginable for Oath among like real decks, like random nonsense. Oath is pretty good against too. This hand is a little slower than I'd want. Mental Misstep is not good against them. I have nothing to cash out the flash. I really like the Oath. I'm going to mulligan. Okay, much better. Turn 1, Orchard Oath. Oh, it's actually better than that. This is turn 1, Orchard Oath Time Walk. I'm going to keep, and Force of Negation is pretty bad. It doesn't help what I'm doing. Show and Tell also is not something I want to introduce to the game because they could show an initiative creature and take over somehow. Vamp's really good because I can Oath into Atraxa, resolve Atraxa trigger, then Vamp for whatever I want next. I'm going to bury the Show and Tell actually because Force of Negation could hit one of their mana sources. And then we're cooking. Lotus, green, Oath, Orchard, blue, Time Walk. Okay. We're playing it out. Oath triggers. My opponent hasn't gotten a turn yet. And I have an Atraxa. Yes. Milled, Oko, and Mana Crypt. Here we've got, I'm not taking Gaia's Blessing. We've got, I like Force of Will. I like Tropical Island. All right, he's seen enough. All right, a turn 1 win. Mono White tends to have a bunch of Containment Priests after board, and that's what they do. And they have Karakas and Swords of Plowshares in their deck. Answers to Containment Priest are things that I want. Long Goodbye, Abrupt Decay, Dismember. Sarah's Emissary, their deck full of creatures. Sphinx is something I can tinker for. Portal is something I can tinker for. I cut Citadel here because I don't trust that my spells will be free or that I'll have enough life to use it once it gets there. Consign to Memory is really interesting. Again, this is the first Vintage outing I've played with this card. This can counter an initiative trigger. It can counter a Chrome Mox or Chrome Mox trigger. It can counter a Solitude trigger. It could counter moving through the initiative dungeon. Like, it can counter introducing of the initiative by a creature. It can counter your upkeep initiative trigger, or it can counter the trigger that happens when you move forward in the dungeon. All of those are interesting. Flusterstorm, Mental Misstep are out, Cataxi Probe's out. I don't think I'm going to play this because I just can't imagine I have room for it. Sensei's Top is too slow for what this matchup's about. Force of Negation. If you're not willing to force a negation a turn 1 Chrome Mox, then don't play this card. They are a deck built around fast mana, where Null Rod could get them if you grind into a late game, but I'd rather have my mana and cast my better spells than them than try to stop their mana somehow. Okay, a bunch of answers to Containment Priest and then other ways to win that don't need my life total necessarily. Let's do it. The Gaia's Blessing gives me a lot of comfort versus Karakas, Swords to Plowshares kind of stuff, because I could just keep firing as long as I have one Atraxa still in the deck. Alright, this hand is bad. Mox Ruby doesn't cast any spells, and I'm just a brick on the draw here. I will be shuffling this. Okay, this is interaction spell, Oath. I'm going to keep this in bottom Portal. This isn't ideal, but it's not bad either. I really don't like giving them creatures off Forbidden Orchard if I'm not oathing immediately, though. Thalia. Okay, that sucks. Can I draw some mana? No. Well, Wasteland Thalia is certainly a way to go. Wastelanding me and casting a spell is going to be hard for him this turn, though. See which one he values more. Now I'm kind of bummed that I bottomed the portal now that the Show and Tell showed up, because Show and Telling or Tinkering Portal is how you beat Containment Priest. Mana for Black Lotus. This means he can introduce the initiative and Wasteland me this turn. It didn't introduce the initiative, but this is a disruptive item. Could name Show and Tell or Long Goodbye with this, or name Oath and Wasteland me. My best draw now is Black Lotus. I can pay 1 for Black Lotus off Forbidden Orchard, and then pay 3 for Oath. Wait, named Oath. There's the waste. Missed a land drop, though. Handful of spells over there. Let's see if this 5 damage can win before I get these spells online. Sapphire. That was clearly the draw for the turn, or it would have been played last turn. Starting to brick off. And Thalia's good. This is my last meaningful draw step of the game. I did hit the land. What does that do? I mean, I'm not going to... If I Thoughtseize, I lose. Okay. I'm going to pass, and I end up at dead. Okay. Now I'm just dead. All right. Play draw. The Vintage experience. Yeah, I mean, I had everything in that could have helped in that situation. It just wasn't in my hand at the time that I needed it. Submit deck, and now I get to go first. Sad. I saw this Gaia's Blessing and thought I had Mox Orchard Oath with Force backup, but alas. This is not a keepable hand. It just doesn't do anything. Mulligan. This can put Sphinx of the Steelwind into play, which unfortunately gets answered by all of the white removal, and my Force of Will won't have a blue card to go with it. Karakas doesn't answer this, though. Containment Priest is too slow. I'm going to keep this and understand that I might just lose, but I don't think going to 5 gives me a better line. And I'm going to get rid of Mox Ruby, because Boseiju is more useful long-term. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'm a long way away from casting the Sphinx. So not going to think about that too hard. Black Lotus. All right, Show and Tell. Risky, but if he's got like a Thalia hand again, we could be in good shape. Playing around Mindbreak Trap. Not that I had a sequence that wouldn't after bottoming the Ruby. All right. The initiative's been introduced. You get to tutor a land. That land can cast Swords to Plowshares. This is a spot where Consigned to Memory would actually be like a fine card, because the answer is Solitude. Or going into the Lost Well instead of the Forge makes me think he doesn't have the answer yet. Let's see a bottom on the scry. Give me 1 turn to take the initiative here and we'll be chilling. Top bottom, hate that. We probably lose now. Any card that is worth keeping is bad news for me, because I really have nothing else following this up. Oh, geez, are we just going to cast a Solitude? Witch and oh no, that's so embarrassing. I forgot about that card. Well, I get like that's the difference between the force blue card and not. Like if I force that, I think the game's over. Now I'm probably dead though. Okay, Sphinx of the Steelwind, Witch Enchanter. Like I said, I've been saying this whole league I haven't really played a lot of Vintage since MH3. Of course, I draw this thing right after. It doesn't matter anymore. I haven't played a lot of Vintage since MH3, and Witch Enchanter is something that answers Sphinx of the Steelwind, which makes me think maybe the Sphinx shouldn't even be in the deck in my sideboard plan anymore if they have access to this on top of all the other things I identified that I was worried about. Okay. Can't imagine how I win this anymore. Archon of Emeria, yeah, for sure. If I draw a land this turn and a show and tell next turn, that's how I do it. Well, that's step one. Now I need to rip show and tell. All right, you get a spooky skeleton. I have to draw show and tell right now. And then even that doesn't beat Swords to Plowshares. Show and tell. Flash is so close. All right. Well, lost the best matchup. Went a little aggressive, but I did learn something important that Witch Enchanter means that I probably just don't even want Sphinx in the plan anymore, which is different than it was 6 months ago. All right, lessons learned. Let's go debrief with Andreas.
All right, welcome back, everyone. This is the debriefing after a cool set of Vintage matches played against BoshNRoll. I'm Andreas, and yeah, here we are to talk a little bit about Vintage in general, Brian's love for Oath, and the matches and Eternal Weekend coming up, I guess. So yeah, first of all, good games, Mr. Oath. I assume you are used to running a bit hotter with the deck with all the trophies you're racking up in real life.
Yeah, so that is something I mentioned in my video a little bit. Like you're obviously a world-class Vintage player. I like to think that like you and I are among the scarier people you could queue into at Eternal Weekend if you're just like a person who showed up for the weekend.
Reasonable.
And yeah, it really shows especially in our Dredge match, not to get too specific right away, but that last turn where you knew you had me checkmated through Boseiju and Ravenous Trap if you just don't fuck it up, that like I feel like a lot of players on the Earth would have lost that game, but you could never lose it just because you know how things move and like how the stack works in priority and what the last 9 cards of your deck were. And I knew them too. I knew I was dead. I knew you knew I was dead. And like, just there is a lot to be gained just knowing how the decks work.
Right.
Like if you were a person who just, Eternal Weekend's coming up. I can borrow Bazaars from a friend. I'll just play Dredge. You would have lost that game. And
yeah.
So it matters a lot who you're playing against is a big part of it.
Yeah, that's reasonable, and it's yeah, I like that take a lot. The average opposition, and of course, you know, running hot or getting allowed to run hot, so to speak. So yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, you've been crushing with Oath. I feel like, did you win a Lotus this year, or do I misremember?
Yeah, so I lost winning in Prague playing Oath. I top 8'd the US with Oath, and then I won the NYSE Black Lotus tournament with Oath over the past 12 months. So
yeah, that is just
yeah,
that's incredible. So what makes you so, obviously, I guess Atraxa is a big part of it, getting the upgrade. That's something I talked a lot about on my end, the upgraded creatures from, you know, Acroma, Angel of Wrath back in my day, and then just Oath getting better and better with better and better creatures. Like, what aside from, you know, the obvious upgrading creature suite makes you so happy about that deck?
So I loved Oath historically. The 4 Grizzlebrand builds I was into, and then Brian Kelly won Eternal Weekend the year with Dramoka and Oriok Salvagers as the Oath hits. That deck was awesome. And then Oath just got bad for a long time. But Atraxa and then the Show and Tell Flash package, Atraxa pitches to all your forces. Atraxa is good enough to flash in one time and get a boost of cards that will help you win the game. Atraxa really changed it, and it's the classic Oath problem is, oh no, I drew a monster. That's just a bad card now. But Atraxa Oath is the smoothest iteration of Oath I think there's ever been in terms of how you can use the monsters even when Oath isn't triggering right now. And that's just really good.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big part of it. And I just always appreciate the deck specialists, and I would consider you like the Oath specialist, always sticking to that deck. And also, as I mentioned, we didn't know about each other's lists specifically today, but we knew about like the archetype or the deck or whatever. How much did that play into your side of it? Like, how much of a guessing game were you on today?
I just built the deck how I would if it was Eternal Weekend. And
Yeah,
that's with the information I have. Like I was very clear in my side of the matches that I have not played a lot of Vintage since Modern Horizons 3 came out. And this is the start of my testing for Eternal Weekend. I have MagicCon Vegas next week, and I have Legacy tournaments there. I have another Modern Pioneer Split Invitational before I even start thinking about Eternal Weekend.
right.
And I usually just cram Vintage in the week or two before the event. So this was my first time playing with Into the Flood Maw. It was my first time playing Vintage with Consigned to Memory. It was the first time I shoved a Sphinx of the Steelwind into Witch Enchanter and quickly learned a lesson there. So there was some learning stuff. My deck would probably be a little different. I'd change a few cards right away. And with a couple more weeks of thinking about it, it would probably look even more different. And I'm still not locked on Oath for Eternal Weekend. I've had a really good year with the deck, but for the purposes of this challenge, when we were talking about making this video, I just said my people would riot if I didn't play Oath. I'm not necessarily playing Oath at Eternal Weekend. I just wanted to get a feel for it right now in the Gauntlet.
For sure. Yeah, see if it's still all the rage. So let's get to the matches here. So first up, we had the Dimir Lurrus deck, which is I would call the deck to beat in Vintage right now, and also one of the biggest reasons to play Oath, because that deck plays only counterspells to defend, basically. So if you're expecting to play against that at the top tables, seems like a good choice. And those games were not too interesting, if I remember correctly. I think you went back-to-back threat in the one game, and then what happened the next game? Do you remember game 2?
I think I just protected a Tinker, and then you conceded. Or,
yeah.
Yeah, or it was something like that. Or I show and tell, and you saw that the show and tell could get Tinker. Like it was something very quick. It was two very uneventful games.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously I fought less than I would on average, but I think in general, my deck struggles with Oath because even if you play that card out proactively, I'm in big trouble. Then my way to win the game is some obscure build, a lot of creatures, and cast a Time Walk. Or actually use Consign in the sideboarded games as a kind of a Time Walk. That's also a way to win the game. But the problem is Oko's so strong against my deck just pound for pound, where that is not the case against, all matchups. But against Lurrus, it's just so good. So it just lines up well, I feel like.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And that's what I was saying a year ago, too, when I picked Oath for Eternal Weekend last year. Dimir Lurrus was the top deck to beat then, too. Some things never changed despite multiple restrictions. And really the only thing the restrictions of Urza Saga and Vexing Bauble did for the Oath Lurrus matchup is make it better for Oath. Because now, now instead of Time Vault being the out, which can beat, like, now you have to win with creatures. You have to put a creature into play and attack me eventually. Even if you get complete control of the game and set up 4 Consigned to Memories and a Time Walk in a row to just push through an Oath, that's kind of the thing you have to do now, where like Psychic Frog Bowmasters are a lot worse against the card Oath of Druids than Time Vault is.
Yeah, I will just mention that Bowmasters plus End Step and then Time Twister is also a way to actually get there around the Oath trigger. But yeah, definitely very tough matchup, and yeah, not the most eventful one. What did we have up next for our second one?
I think we did Dredge next.
Yeah, that was Dredge. So you highlighted already one of the games. I remember I mulliganed a lot in the first game, and I had 1 force. And you went either backup or back-to-back threat, kind of the same formula. That was awesome against Lurrus. I didn't have much to do there. Then game 2, I have double force, which is amazing. I talked about this when Dredge has 7 cards, double disruption. That's where you want to be against almost any deck, and you really got to feel the pain of that. Did I tip it off when I griefed you, by the way, that I wanted you to tinker at some point, or was that just all in my mind?
No. I don't remember the exact situation, but I remember being griefed and saying, "Oh, he's probably going to take this," but then you took something else instead, and that
I took show and tell and left you with the emissary.
Yep. So that made sense, and especially that game went really long because I had the Tabernacle that made you go onto the Icarid plan, and I stuck the Tabernacle at more than 12 life. I think it might have still been at 20 when I played the Tabernacle, and I was like,
I think so. Yeah,
I'm out of reach of Creeping Chill now. So this should be like buy me a lot of time, but Creeping Chill wasn't in your deck. at that point.
Yeah. Correct.
Which we found out as we played out your entire deck that game. And then,
Yep.
yeah, just all 4 Icarids. That game, it came down to I just didn't have a green source for my Boseiju. Like, that was a game where I used Boseiju to cast Oko just to stay alive a little longer. But
yeah, I remember that.
If I had clipped your Bazaar when you only had 1 or 2 Icarids in the graveyard, it wasn't enough damage. I would have played Oko next turn. You would have run out of black creatures, and then I have all the time. So that one was just like Dredge doing its thing, narrowly squeezing through. When it couldn't do everything it wanted to do.
And then I adjusted for game 3 because now I had the leyline confirmed, and sorry, not leyline, exactly the opposite. I didn't have leyline to worry about. At least I think so. So I wanted the chills because I think I shaved like 1 grief, and I'm trying to think about what else I shaved for that game. The wastelands, because on the draw, kind of awkward. And now the creeping chills were actually useful because I saw the tabernacle, and I feel like I could easily lose a close game to that card. So I adjusted a little bit, and then as the game went by, I think I'm in this game. I hit 4 Narcomoebas, but my Icarids are incredibly deep in the deck, which inevitably ends up giving you a lot of time. And then you can talk a little bit about your Atraxa trigger and what you got from it, and kind of the squeeze you alluded to earlier.
Yeah, that game. You kept 7, you had double force, you had Bazaar, you were doing everything that you're supposed to do as a Dredge deck. And it's still, the game came down to a spot where I was 1 mana short of getting complete control. I think 2 or 3 turns in a row where it was like the Atraxa trigger, I was 1 mana short of Time Walk plus Boseiju or something. Or I was 1 mana short of Tinkering. So I had to Demonic Tutor for Tabernacle just to stay alive for a turn instead. Yeah, but unfortunately, the Atraxa also revealed the Ravenous Trap, so you knew to play around it. And your graveyard was big enough that if I don't do anything, I die to your slow Dredge. If I do anything, you Bazaar in response. And then that one, on the final turn where I had to hardcast my Ravenous Trap in your upkeep, if I had 1 more mana there, I could have Boseju'd on my turn, forcing the activation, then Ravenous Trap just ends the game. And I was just 1 mana short for that whole sequence, and you just like miracle missed on those 2 creeping chills when I did hardcast the trap.
I think I had 23 cards and I had to hit 2 of. So it's not. I mean, I don't know the math, but I don't think it's that unreasonable to miss there.
Yeah, it was. It's probably close to a coin flip. Might be a little better.
I would guess so.
I was prepared to die when I cast that spell, basically, and I was happy when I didn't. And then it was a spot where you have 12 cards in your deck. You have 1 Bazaar left.
Yeah.
If the creeping chills are above the Bazaar, you can't win.
Correct.
If I find anything before you find the Bazaar, I win.
Yes.
And then the Bazaar was like your second draw. And I drew
That's what dreams are made of.
Right. I drew the Forbidden Orchard the turn you drew the Bazaar, which if it was the other way, I would have had Atraxa going.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah,
that was like the tightest margin you can imagine.
Yeah, that was a really great game. But it did showcase why I don't like playing a million ley lines in my Oath sideboard, because you had the nuts. You just kept 7, had double force, Bazaar going. Everything
even
broke.
Hollow One, I think that game.
Right, yeah, you started on Hollow One. Every single thing went your way. You drew better than me. Your dredges were pretty good, and it still came down to, you had to find your 1-of in 12 cards before I found literally anything after a really cool back and forth. So I don't like ley lines. I don't like being that heavy. Maybe I did 2 Tabernacle, 1 Ravenous Trap was my build. Maybe reconfiguring that maybe a little more. Maybe I don't need 2 Tabernacles. Like, dial it in a little more for how Dredge is currently constructed, but that everything went your way that game, and it was still just so close. And that's why I don't think Oath needs to be that crazy about Dredge.
That's a reasonable analysis. I also like this Sarah's Emissary kind of doing a lot of double duty. It's a big threat with show and tell. Mm-hmm. Also, that game, when you have 6 mana and you're 1 off from casting Atraxa, I have Force of Vigor green card, but I don't go for it. And that's like the most, at that point, Oath is too late. But I could actually delay your hardcast Atraxa and make Orchard and Pearl bad draws. So that's like a slight, if I'm completely on top of my game, I vigor your Mox Jet or whatever it was and simply don't allow for this. But that's high level stuff, and there's always room for growth.
Yeah, that's something that's worth pointing out to the viewers as well. And I said it in my deck tech at the start of the video that when Oath is going wrong, like this Oath build is so good at presenting a threat, presenting a threat, presenting a threat. And if they fend it off, they've probably had to force twice to do that, then nobody has anything. And those games lend themselves to 7 mana Atraxa eventually. You cast Atraxa a lot when you play this deck. And that's always one of the clocks that's ticking.
Oh, for sure. And big thing to highlight about the deck for sure. Up next, we had Coveted Jewel, and that is, oh my goodness, that was a lot of action on turn 1. You decide to go for your Show and Tell, and then I simply have my hand lined up perfectly because I could even respond with a PO before you getting access to the next cards.
Yeah, that one, I kind of knew I was playing with fire. I kept a 6 that had Force, Blue Card, Show and Tell, Atraxa, Demonic Tutor, Moxjet. So I needed to draw any mana source before my hand does anything, but I play 26 mana sources or whatever, like close to half the deck is a draw. Then I get to DT and do whatever I want, and I get to pass the force check the first time. And I could have just DT'd for a second force and have force, blue card, and try to grind into the goop with you. I could have gotten Tinker, and maybe that's better. But I wouldn't have had the mana source, so I just got Black Lotus and decided to shove. And if you have the One Ring, that's fine. If you have Jewel, that's annoying, but there's not many instants in your deck. But
correct.
You had the one that mattered.
I think with the way this played out, Jewel, I mean, the One Ring was for sure not the card I had because I had 4 mana available and didn't do anything. So at this point, when I'm metamorphing a Mox, I'm kind of bridging to the Jewel. That's kind of what I'm saying, right?
When we were playing, he has a turn 2 Jewel. And then I'd like to think I'd be more dialed in at Eternal Weekend, but I drew the land, I resolved the Demonic Tutor, and then I was looking at my whole deck just thinking about my options, and then I was like, oh, Black Lotus, bang, and just did it. So I
and
probably
maybe you
could have been tighter there.
You're maybe it's also the fact that I get my 3 cards first, so there's something about sink into stupor being relevant all of a sudden. There's just a little bit of but I don't think waiting will do you much good there. Then you have to fight over the Jewel anyway, and maybe get into you basically give me more time to make the Show and Tell good on my end.
The real problem was I couldn't do anything. I didn't have further plan. Like if I Demonic Tutor for a second force there, I force pitching Show and Tell, then I force pitching Atraxa, and then my hand is like Show and Tell, and I have 2 mana sources in play and nothing else going on, which maybe just I don't think putting you in the garbage is what I need to do and try to high roll. But
I think it's a tough one usually, and also I don't even think you had green mana in your mana base, so you're even further away from casting a game-ending spell. So I can definitely see why you went for it. And then game 2, it's just like I talked a lot about the disruption lining up either great or poorly when it comes to Flusterstorm's hit or miss. Consign is, well, if I have Paradoxical Outcome, also a miss, right? So that was just like a matter of you can't mulligan something that handles the One Ring and Jewel. That's just unreasonable. But I had PO, so I guess I'm just the greatest, right? That was more of a thing of how things lined up, in my opinion.
And I said that on my side in the video as well, where your deck has like Karn, Jewel, One Ring that Consign handles, and then it has the 4 POs that it doesn't. And,
Ancestral Tinker. More or less those. It's like 2/3.
And I did leave in Flusterstorm this time. I wasn't doing that 6 months ago. I was just cutting Flusterstorm versus Jewel because I didn't like anywhere it went. But now with Sink into Stupor, there's more things worth flustering. But I had the Vampiric Tutor that game where it was like I could get Null Rod, but my hand is land Mox Lotus. So I'm putting myself down to 1 land to play the game with. Or I could get again the Show and Tell and just lose to whatever you put in, or I could get Tinker, and then if you have Force, I have nothing. I'm also playing on 1 land, and I just ended up getting Ancestral Recall to try to find some combination of land and spell, and
Yeah.
it ended up just my ancestor was a blank, and then I just had to hide behind consigned memory for the whole game.
Yeah, and I could change some POs and draw my deck, so not much to say there, except Jewel asks a lot of tough questions, and if you have a Pyroblast, you can lose to Jewel. If you have a Consign, you can lose to PO or Tinker or whatever. That's part of what makes the deck great. So yeah, Jewel is in the books. Then in the end, we had Mono White, and then you started to show the potential of Oath with the Lotus Time Walk turn 1. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I just had the nuts on the play, knowing the matchup and everything. That
yeah.
one was very easy. I'm glad I got to showcase why you might select Oath for a tournament. Mono White's been a top 5 deck at Vintage for a year and a half, 2 years now, and
Yeah.
it was even flirting with the top deck around Eternal Weekend last year. And
Yep.
that matchup structurally is just laughably positive for Oath. Obviously, you could like mull to 5 and have to go all in on a creature that dies easily. Like that could happen, but generally just the structure of one deck versus the other.
Yeah, I agree. I do think having the 4 Witch Enchanters makes it, there's more game to it now, where earlier that was like some 7-drop Angel card that was never going to be relevant except for a mana source. But I actually think the Witch Enchanters, sometimes, kill an Oath, sometimes even uncounterable, and that does give a bit more game. But in general, I agree. You don't even care that much about Archon. Sometimes you do, but I have a lot of the initiative creatures you can kind of handle. So yeah, I agree. That's a good reason to pilot Oath if initiative is popular.
Yep. Yeah, and like we talked about, in White, initiative is a creature deck that needs to put a creature into play to win. Lurrus is a creature deck, needs to put a creature into play to win. And then if we leave the top 5 decks, in Dredge is a little different, and Jewel Shop's obviously something completely different than everything else. If we leave the top 5 decks, you run into like Bug, there's Deathrite Lurrus decks, like 4-color Lurrus, there's aggro shops and prison shops. I like Oath against all of that.
Yeah.
The whole... I mean, Doomsday is somewhere in the top 10 as well. I don't like that matchup. Doomsday and Jewel Shops are the ones I'm most worried about. But the rest of these decks win with creatures, and especially at Eternal Weekend, like an open field is 600 players or whatever, people might not own power. There is a unpowered and budget prizes at Eternal Weekend.
Yeah.
Like if I queue into Legacy Mono Red Stompy, I just want to crush that deck with something like Oath. I don't want to be surprised at like, oh, I only budgeted for the top 5 decks. Like I carefully tuned my Dimir Lurrus deck, and then you just get Blood Moon and die. I like being just proactive and powerful versus random crap that you might play against.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point about, bigger tournaments and not just, 40-person grinders playing against each other online. That's usually my backyard.
Right.
I wanted to ask about one more thing, but now it's slipping my mind before I let you go. So Pittsburgh is still your hometown, right? It's going to be a hometown Eternal Weekend.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. Shout out to Card Titan for holding it in Pittsburgh year after year. That rules for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I don't have much more. I like the way we got to showcase the format. Very different decks when you think about it, and so much intricacies in each matchup. Something I mentioned on my side was the whole knowing the matchup, how powerful that is. Because I'm used to playing a lot in the dark or leaning on, Googling my opponent, and then who knows what comes up. But yeah, I mean, if your opponent's on Dredge or Jewel, you need totally different cards to, to handle that. And playing a deck like Oath, I imagine, you basically you mainly playing your own plan. You're very proactive, so you don't have to worry about that as much as a classic control deck.
Yeah, definitely. Just having 9 win the game spells in your deck, and you can sculpt around how am I going to shove one of these into play. That gives you a lot of... It raises the floor in random matchups, random unknown matchups. And one thing that is always like a joy and then super stressful is like at Eternal Weekend or a big 7-round, 8-round and beyond tournament, if you're undefeated, the field gets smaller, and you can eventually memorize all the undefeated decks, and then you have that information. But then when you take your first loss, you go from a pool of 6 or 8 people to a pool of 24 people, and then you don't know anything anymore. So it's actually like a huge competitive loss in addition to losing a match and having to win out from there. Like that is, and that's something that people I coach and work with are surprised by when I say like, oh yeah, or in a tournament report where I'm like, yeah, I knew what my opponent was playing. People are like, how? It's like, because I look around, because that's important to know.
Oh, for sure. I used to do that a lot as well. And back in my heyday, we had like a group chat and helped each other scout and stuff like that. It's a big part of it. The information is big because that's why to get Action Probe is a great card. It's better to know what your opponent has than to guess about it, right? That's just how it goes.
Yeah, I'd start every match at 18 if I could know my opponent's deck.
Oh, definitely. I'll take that trade as well.
Yep.
But yeah, that. By the way, last thing, you got a match win off me today. I just want to mention that. Not too much about it, but just one tiny comment.
I showed the world that even gods can bleed.
Yeah, I actually thought I was done for when I was down a game with Dredge. Then I thought, oh yeah, this is Brian's day to shine. But
yeah, that game 3 when you just kept 7, I'm sure you were pretty happy.
Yeah. Then I knew the tides were turning. But that's gonna do it for us today. You can get us out of here, and good games as always. It was a cool day.
All right, yeah. Everybody, thanks for watching. If you're watching on my side, this has been Ecobaronen, Andreas Peterson. If you're watching on his side, I'm BoshNRoll, Brian Koval. We both have channels. Go check out the other side of the matches, and thanks for watching.